How's everyone doing today? I am still practicing my mindfulness and doing my best to keep making videos. Hope everyone is well. I pray everyone is well. Hope is desperation. We careful with our words and language, right? So I pray everyone is well. I am doing well. There's been some really cool alignments, I guess, happening in the sky, and lots of great changes happening inside and out. And today I wanted to make a video. I'm making a video about, so I had a friend over recently, and we talk about different esoteric topics and world events and things, topics that are going on in perspectives and different things like that. And from my group I'm in with the Gnostic Church and Academy, somebody posted something about the number 42 being the answer to, however it is in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. My son and I love that movie. His friends, they love that movie, and so we talk about this, and I never really comprehended the reason why the answer is number 42 is 42. And you can look at it from geometry, from different ways mathematically. However, some recent information that came to attention for me was brought through the group, and it was basically that in coding, the number 42 creates an asterisk, and an asterisk means, can be interpreted as anything you want it to mean. In other words, what the genius computer in the movie, book, whatever is saying is life is whatever you want it to be. And then that led me to something I've talked about numerous times in numerous videos I've made. And I am a fan of repetition. I feel like repetition is, they say is the best way to learn. So, I'm getting on here to state this again, I guess, for the record. And, maybe some people haven't seen the other videos I've made about this, but, it's like, he's like, well, I don't know. I think that we're just here to spread the word of God, of Jesus. And, and I said, well, actually in Genesis 1, it says we are to be stewards of the land and name the animals and have dominion and take care of and all that. So, that gave me this like random vision in my mind, so clear. And again, I think I've even shared this before, and it just reiterated in my mind of like the paths we can choose and the ways we can live life. And this inner devil, this lower self, really wants to pervert and invert and basically make it so we are saying F you to God, essentially. We are separate, we are special, we are made by God, we are sons of and daughters of God. And God gave us free will, just like a parent gives to their child, to make your choices, do what you want. I love you always. I'm not always going to like what you do. And I think about like what would make God, well, I don't like the word pride or proud necessarily, but what would make God happy with me, grateful that I'm choosing to be a God man, someone who's in power, someone who's in self-control. And I always bring it back to like Godfather 2. I know it's silly, but it's just like a perfect archetype to me of a man who doesn't speak too much, who's willing to do what it takes to protect his family, provide for his family, take care of his neighbors, be there for others, while accepting, kind of the way it could be here in this three-dimensional material realm. And no, he's not perfect, and none of us are. That's part of what I'm going to get into is, to me, it's like, what kind of people, he doesn't really drink very often, certainly doesn't get drunk, definitely doesn't do drugs, doesn't seem to cheat on his wife, thinks family is very important. His wife, he loves, seemingly, from what I, again, just a movie, just an idea. However, I've met men like this. And when I think about the types of people that we tend to use as role models or tend to look up to, it's usually a woman who's modest and has humility, and, it's almost always people who don't speak too much, men or women. And it's almost always someone who we consider strong, who's strong-willed, who's got self-control, who doesn't get drunk, who doesn't act like animals, essentially, who, doesn't get into their feelings too much, who stays calm and stoic, man or woman, again. These are the types of people we look up to as role models, and I think it's because some inside part of ourself knows that's the way of God, knows that's the higher path, is to be somebody who puts their family, their God first, then family, then community, and so on, and not necessarily themselves. And they get happiness, more importantly, joy, out of being a caretaker, out of being a steward, out of being essentially a trustee for the future, for the beneficiaries that are coming after. And, like the parable of the elder who plants the olive tree, who will never see an olive from that tree. It's like, why would you do that? It's because I love the future. I love the idea of being some kind of steward for the land and for the earth and for the future, planting seeds that will feed future generations here of men and women. And it's not about me, essentially. It's about what I can leave behind. It's when we think of great men, great women, it's those who left something great behind. Parks and, Teddy Roosevelt left behind all these national parks, for example. And, now I'm not going to sit here and get into speculation about politicians and what the ulterior motive, hindsight is 2020, and we can get into the ups and downs, how every single action or whatever can be looked at as negative or positive, depending on perspective and how it affects you and whatever. Like, the point is that's what we look at as great men, great women who did leave behind amazing stuff like railroads and stuff that really help people today. Ships, and so on, buildings, whatever it is, so to me, that just like guides us into the idea that there's clearly two ways to live here, which again, I've talked about this numerous times, so forgive me if this is a repetition. However, I hope you don't need to forgive me and just appreciate the fact that I'm, sharing another perspective on this or not, and just that it is important information. It's like, I think a lot of us tend to be afraid to be looked up to because we don't like letting people down. And we don't like disappointing people, and we don't want to be, it isn't about being holier than thou or on some pedestal or putting ourselves there or acting that way, which I've certainly been guilty of that behavior. I don't drink, or I don't do, and I do drink occasionally. I have a drink here and there. So, it's just silly. It's just like the energy I've come across with and that others do too, these holy rollers, we might call them, or people who think they're better than somebody. And the trick seems to be is like, I'm not better than you and I'm not worse than you. That's true humility. If you look up the definition, it's different than humbleness. I'm modest. I don't, I do my best not to show off. It's definitely something I can continue to work on, I'm sure. I do my best to teach my son not to be that way. Just do things for your own, your own self. Don't be a show. You don't need to put on a show. That's where we get in trouble anyways, is when too many people are watching. That creates jealousy, envy, and so on. Well, people allow that to be created. So, it's like, to me, the lower self wants us to disappoint God. And just forgive me for the words I'm going to use. Sometimes it's difficult to sit here and think of the exact right articulation. Words and language are limited, right? So just go with me on this, if you don't mind, and give me a bit of grace and compassion and mercy in the language I'm going to use. So, we don't want to disappoint God. But the devil, our lower self, our animal self does, and it wants us to mock God and mock the fact that we are created in God's image and likeness, and that we are to be these higher beings, these God beings. And that is the whole idea behind the fallen angel, archetypal symbolic story, is when you go against God, you are cast out of paradise, out of heaven. You are not looked up to, you are looked down upon. And I think a lot of people choose that because it helps them avoid responsibility. And a lot of people, they say, well, I can't do this perfectly, so I'm not going to do it at all. I'm just going to be, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to, it's like so many relationships I come across at this point, somebody's cheating, the man, the woman, not sticking by their family, not having loyalty. And again, think about the relationships we look up to. We celebrate people who together 30, 40, 50 years, only been together with each other, virgins. They, stuck it out. They didn't think there was something better out there. They didn't bite that apple when offered. They continue to love God, respect God and their significant other. And those are the types of people we look at and we look up to and consider role models and how we can live. And I think a lot of people just say, well, not, that's nice for them, but not for me. And, I have had people in my life that give me that spiel like, oh, well, maybe you're meant for greatness, or maybe you're, God means that for you, but not for me, and it's like, well, no, God means that for every one of us. It's just you are afraid of that. You are afraid to be looked up to. You are afraid to be a disappointment. You're afraid to let people down. And it's like this. Imagine the power in you failing, what we would call failing, which you only fail if you quit. Remember that. You only fail if you quit. It's when you get back up and say, yeah, no, I'm not perfect. And that's where the humility comes in. And I've really gotten to a place, mostly, I'm sure I still fall short, of not coming across like I'm better than somebody. Like, I do my best to be a certain type of man, of principles, of, God loving principles, of loving my son and my community and those around me, saying, yeah, well, I mess up too. That's okay. It's that I keep going. It's like when I would yell at my son when he was younger, I'd be like, well, and I'd want to run away. I'd want to quit. I'd want to give up. And it just, God kept sending me these messages that, no, it's, then you're leaving your son or the world or the earth or whoever with these negative memories of you. It's when you keep showing up, when you keep pushing, when you don't give up. Of course you didn't fail. You fell short in that moment, but you now stuck around long enough to create more positive memories. My son barely remembers a lot of that because I've hugged him and kissed him and told him I loved him, because I've stood by his side, because I'm still here now, unlike others in his life. And, because I just said, no, I'm not giving up. I am going to be a better man. Every single second of every day, I'm going to continue to push myself to be a better man. So because I've fallen short in the past, and some people see me that way and don't want to give me compassion or mercy or forgiveness and say, okay, yeah, well, we all mess up. So what, he yelled, or so what, he did this or that at that time. Look at him now, and it's sometimes that's why we need to let go of old people in our lives, because they don't, ever want to give us that space of change, even though we clearly have, and they just keep holding this image, and again, graven images. That's why one of the commandments, and if you think everything is just concrete, somebody's a certain way, they're going to be that way. Is there truth to patterns? Yeah, there's truth to patterns, but and I know I'm kind of all over the place. Again, forgive me, I'm not perfect. And that's the whole thing, is like, I'm not perfect. I just keep striving to be a better man every day. And it's when I say, well, I'm just this way, that I lose. I failed, and like my ex, and I just bring it up again as an example, but in her case, it's like she has admitted what she's done is like not Christ-like, is not following God per se. Is kind of realizing that there's more than one voice going on inside of us, but like she still continues to do the behavior, and it's like, well, not I'm just not that, I'm not as good as you, or I'm not I look up to you, but I'm not, and it's like, well, of course you are, we all are. And it's like people just get caught up in this, well, I messed up, so I'm just going to keep being messed up. And it's like, well, and it's like almost like it makes you a hypocrite or some bullshit spell, excuse my language, of how to keep you down. And that is all about the lower self, all about the devil that wants to keep you from being the saint, from being a God man, a God woman. And it is, most of the saints were like some of the greatest, most decrepit sinners there were, and they were like, well, no, I'm not going to be this way, and I don't care what you think about my past. It's what led me here to have the courage and strength to be this better man, this better woman. I've learned my lessons, and inside and out, literally, from my own experience, of why I choose to be a God man, choose to be by my son's side, choose not to go out on Friday nights, choose not to bring random women home, choose to be somebody that others tend to look up to, choose to do my best to keep working on stoicism and calmness and groundedness and peace and love and prayer and praying for others, especially those that I have perceived as hurting me or letting me down or disappointing me. Forgive them as I want to be forgiven. Continue to have compassion with myself. I am not perfect. I fall short regularly, and it's that I keep getting back up and keep saying, okay, God, I messed up. I pray you can forgive me. I'm going to keep doing my best to not repeat that pattern, not repeat that behavior, break the patterns of my ancestry, break the patterns of my own past, break the patterns of my DNA, alchemize them into gold, and become, the best man I can be. And that doesn't make me better than anybody. It makes me somebody who just keeps pushing to be better than I was yesterday. And that's the thing, right? And I can cry thinking about that. It's like, and this is where I think a lot of people are messed up. And if, there was a devil externally, internally, which seems to be the case, wouldn't it want everything other than you being close to God, close to your Father, being obedient to your Father, being somebody who has the courage to be, quote unquote, better than others that choose that path? And I also want to say that it is all about holiness, right? So if all it is that some of us are holding this space while others are holding a different space, I thank God regularly that I am grateful to be somebody called to the light, called to the narrow path, called to the path that Christ laid out for us, so that I don't have to hold the space of somebody, again, like my ex, who's shared with me that she struggles still, and I'm like, it's very simple. You struggle because you get in this pattern of doing something, shitty, or eating the potato chip, and it brings you down, falling for that temptation, and then, you do it and you feel good for a second, and then you feel terrible, like any drug or alcohol or junk food, the dopamine. And then we get stuck in these patterns, and we keep trying to like get happy from some external source, when it's truly just about serving your husband, serving your wife, that's serving your children, serving your family, then serving your community. That's where true joy comes from, and that feeling of fulfillment and purpose. Like we're here and we're actually not wasting our life or wasting our time. And when we just focus on ourselves and our own quote unquote happiness, that's not sustainable, and it's constantly in this pattern of devilish possession, greedy, selfish, self-centered, narcissistic behavior. And the solution to that, the medicine for that, is to serve others. It says it in AA, in the steps. It says it in all spiritual paths other than Luciferianism. It's all about serving the community, serving others. That is where you'll find joy. That is where you'll find God. That is where you find Christ. The divine in me serves the divine in you. All the external details are kind of irrelevant, essentially. And for the first time in a very long time, I actually have saw my grandmother, and we don't really generally get along, not for a long time, not for many, many years. Like, her son does not talk to her. My mom died an alcoholic. My sisters both passed away living with her. Her sister doesn't talk to her. Her brother doesn't talk to her. And again, this is not to get too personal, but, she's just somebody who doesn't really get along with a lot of people. And I don't need to get into why or details. That's her business, and mine, and my family's. But the point is I was recently able to get along with her when I saw her pretty well for the first time in a long time, and I attribute it wholeheartedly to mindfulness, to prayer, to the Gnostic Church and Academy of Lord Jesus Christ that I've been involved with now for over a year, pretty consistently, and on and off for more than that, but like regularly being part of the community that has been developed online, and just the perspectives there. And life is whatever you want it to be, and I want to be somebody who's looked up to, somebody who's a God man, somebody who's there for others, somebody who you can lean on, who you can come to in times of trouble. And again, like, I know The Godfather's not a perfect example. However, it is an example I grew up with of something I always wanted to be, minus, all the violence. However, it seems to me he only does violence when his family's under attack or being threatened. And shoot, you want to threaten my family or attack my family in some way, I can assure you that I'm going to meet it with whatever is necessary to protect my family. Of course, always on paper first, but if I go out protecting my family or my community, I can't think of a more noble way to go. We're all out of here and out of these bodies one way or the other. So to me, it's just like a super clear vision of you can live the God way, the way, like, I think of my ex's, step grandmother, who, a lot of people look up to. She's very polite, very loving, still is assertive, still speaks her truth, but is there for others, shows up for God, prays regularly, very loyal wife to the end, even through all her husband's sickness. And it's like somebody we would bring up regularly as an archetype of like somebody she could look up to, my ex. And she's like, well, yeah, I'm not as good as she is. And it's like, no, you have the potential to be even better. And it's just like we sell ourselves short from fear, from thinking not me, or from, and it mostly seems to be from fear of failure, fear of letting others down, because I messed up here, messed up there. It's like means that it's just not for me. And that's, tell me what could be more powerful than making a mistake, admitting it, facing it, and doing your best not to do it again. And if you do it again, yeah, I did it again, and I'm going to keep working at it. I'm not giving up. As long as God doesn't give up on me, I'm not going to give up. And because of that, I've become one of the best fathers I know. I've been told that many times, so it's not just me in my head, by my son, who's better than that to tell you that. Kids are pretty honest generally. I've got, he lets me read his journal sometimes, and he just thinks I'm amazing. He hopes that one of his fears is like, how am I ever going to be as good of a dad as my dad? And I tell him, don't worry, you'll probably be even better. Because I didn't have a dad growing up per se. And I mean, I had some men around, but generally I didn't really have that. And it was all God. It was all reading the Bible. It was going to church. It was, studying nature. It was studying what I didn't want to see, in a sense. It was literally going to the mirror image of, okay, well, I see all this, and so I'm going to do my best to do this. And then I've met other men along the way, luckily, thank God, that didn't cheat on their wives, that didn't scream and yell, that, maybe got angry here and there. However, they handled it very maturely. And it just showed me that, a man is not somebody that's screaming and yelling. It's the calm smile, like, okay, I hear you, and I'm going to do what I have to figure this out. No bitching, no moaning, just doing what you need to. And as an adult, as a caretaker, as a steward, accepting God, accepting nature, accepting the world, accepting everything as it is, and what can I do with that, the wholeness of life. And that no matter what I do, there's going to be, perceived ups and downs to that, and that's okay. And I'm not here to be perfect. I'm just here to keep doing my best to live on certain principles, be honest, be honorable, chivalrous, and a gentle man, a noble man, someone who's constantly doing their best to be better than they were a moment ago. And again, yeah, I fall short. I still have lots of stuff to deal with and work through, and behaviors that I'd like to continue to alchemize into gold, into power. And so I just see clearly that there's like this quote unquote devilish way to live, our lower self that wants us to mock God just by our base existence. Like, keep being an animal, keep being somebody who just is an embarrassment essentially to their family, to God. Again, forgive me for the words. Sometimes it's just easier to just say what comes to mind rather than be so careful. And rather than be that saintly folk that people look up to, that is a shining light in this place and shows that, this is possible. And that obviously ruffles some people's feathers. However, it's also somebody, because of that, it's like somebody people look up to, even the people whose, their feathers are ruffled because, man, how come that person's able to be, that man, that woman's able to be so loyal to God and to their principles in this messed up world, and not me, makes them feel lesser than. And, well, then do something about that, if that's what's going on with you, because you can too. And if not, then again, I'm grateful not to hold the space you're holding. I pray for you that you do find Jesus, find God, find the narrow path, the righteous path, the higher message, the higher mission. And, any one of us can do it. I just think that a lot of it is, is fear. It's fear of letting people down, of letting ourselves down. And then we do that, and we just get stuck in these patterns. And I'm telling you, forgive yourself, let it go, and just get up and do better. You know, it doesn't matter what you did yesterday, what you did 5 minutes ago. That means you can come back, seek forgiveness, repent, and do your best not to repeat that behavior, repeat that pattern. See your patterns, write them down, and really see them outside of yourself, what you do, and do your best to say, you know what, today's the day. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm living for God. Yes, it's difficult, or it seems to be. I assure you, for me, I found it far easier than living how most people live here, you know, on the lower self, the animal instincts, the seeking pleasure externally, you know. There is no greater pleasure than a connection, a relationship with God, and living as someone who is humble, humility, pious, and modest, and just doing their best to make themselves better, while in turn doing their best to be a better part of this world, to therefore make this world a more peaceful, heavenly place to be. Stop leaving destruction behind you. Do your best to, when you leave this place, you know, what did you leave behind? What memories? What land? How did you leave this place? What did you do with your time? Were you just worried about your own happiness, your own, you know, making this or that, or, you know, or were you really worried about what kind of world you're leaving behind? That, you know, if you showed up and it's a mess, well, that's because people before you left it a mess. And, you know, well, they did that, so why should I have to clean it up? Long time ago, I started learning I don't care who cleans it up. I just don't want to be walking around all over garbage. So I pick it up and throw it in the garbage can, you know, and doesn't matter ultimately who did it. It takes the time when we say, I'm done with this, I'm breaking this pattern, and I'm not here to blame. I forgive you. I have mercy. I have compassion. I want the same for myself, for my son, for my family, from God, from Jesus, from Christ, from that, you know, Jesus of Nazareth. And you know, choose to be a God man, choose to be a God woman. You can do it if I can do it. And the only thing holding you back is you and your own fear and your own pattern and your own worry of hypocrisy or whatever. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Be a better man today, a better woman today. Start right now. Like, okay, I did this, I faced all this. And, you know, actually one of the greatest things that ever helped me was the 12 steps of AA. I'm going to be honest. Like, that basically lays it out for you. If you're being fully honest with yourself through those steps, that's exactly basically what I'm talking about. It just occurred to me. You know, it's face yourself on paper, see what you do, how you do it, and do your best to alter that. When you think you should go this way, don't, you know, do this, do the other thing. And yeah, I think this world, I know this world will be a more loving, peaceful place with families again, with communities, with people worried about others and not just themselves anymore, regardless of what happened before you got here or what happened yesterday. So I love you all. I pray that you got something out of this, that this was valuable to you, and that if it is repetitive for you, even just coming from me, I still pray that you appreciate it, and that I maybe said a few different things that hit differently this time. I love you all. You can do it. Don't keep falling for the devil making you less than God knows you can be. That's really ultimately what it comes down to, is a way to mock the specialness of being a man or a woman and being a lesser version. That's, you know, the Jewish people call those people goyim, animals. And, you know, I don't mean to be mean, but rightfully so. You know, if you're divorced and doing all this, like, if you were the one that left, that cheated on your wife, cheated on your husband, if you were the one that broke up your family, if you are selfish, self-centered, just pleasure-seeking, you know, falling for temptation, you are part of the problem here and not the solution that God laid out in the Bible, in you, in your heart, and you know it. And, you know, the only thing stopping you from walking back on the narrow and righteous path that Jesus showed us to do is you. So choose to stop today, right now, and go back to God. Come back. We love you. We miss you. God misses you. Choose God. He gave you the choice. It's up to you. Choose God. You will never regret it. And of course, you will be tested and tempted. Just keep staying focused on being that woman, that man that you know you look up to inside. The picture of yourself that you see, you can be that. I know it, I promise. thelivingmysterychurch.org. Anytime you want to chat, please book a call. I love you. Peace.